Hi, everybody, and welcome to another exciting literature-centered, book-loving edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted on this episode to be talking with someone that has, it looks like a lovely shelfie space, as well as a nice mug with like kindness matters on it. And I love the size of this
It,
mug.
yes, kindness matters all the time.
I agree. I agree. Delighted to be talking with author Leslie Youngblood. Leslie, thank you for jumping on and thank you
Thank
for
you.
talking with me.
You are so welcome, Jason. Oh, can I add one thing? I like to
Absolutely.
I like to put the C in there because that's what I write under Leslie C. Youngblood.
Delighted to be talking with author Leslie C. Youngblood. Yeah, absolutely.
Authors are we're so particular, right? We're just so particular.
Oh, I get you. I get you. I publish research in
Hmm.
literacy, and there's another Jason D. Hart that writes in like, oh my gosh, it's some scientific field. And I think his middle initial is L. So I'm always like, can you put the D in there for me just
Right.
so people know I'm not um
Same thing with me. There's another Leslie Youngblood, so I always have to specify Leslie C. Youngblood.
mhm,
So
mhm.
we're on the same page with that.
Absolutely. But great to have all the voices out there. So many that we need middle initials that totally works. Totally
Right.
on for that. Um, so I know you best as an author with sort of the world of I don't know if you call it middle grades or young adult. I feel like there's a nice little flexible sort of range there to what you're writing and creating. The
You're
titles being, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you're right. There is a range. First of all, thank you for having me. I
Mhm,
really
mhm,
appreciate the opportunity. So I just want to thank you and thank you for what you do. But my first published books are middle grade. And
mhm,
so middle grade, for those who may not know, would be targeted toward 8 to 12-year-olds.
mhm,
YA is usually 13 and older. So there
mhm.
is a pretty specific niche for middle grade, and that age range is normally 8 to 12-year-olds.
Yeah, yeah. And I find there's a little play at both ends of that, but I just love that there are now uh, so many, and of course there should be more, but so many middle grades and young adult books because when I was growing up, it was not that
Right.
way. You sort of read, the Boxcar Children or something, and then immediately
Mhm.
jumped to whatever sort of mature book you could find that fit if you were going to continue being a reader.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that because I think my genre would be a realistic fiction, realistic middle grade. And
Hmm.
so I try, as the name suggests, to write about issues that kids face in their everyday life, and
Hmm.
and just try to give them almost like, even though it's fictional, a guide to help them. And so that's kind of how I base the middle grade that I've done so far.
Yeah. So speaking of the message on your cup about kindness, um, the Love Like
Uh-huh.
Sky series is those are the books that I know you best for. So there's Love Like Sky and Forever This Summer. And
Right.
so just
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I just get ready to jump in.
oh, you're good. You're good. You are fine. You are fine.
So let me so Love Light Sky is my first book, and that was published in 2018.
Mhm.
And definitely it does speak on kindness. And I think anything that I would ever do in middle grade would bring out these virtues to teach empathy,
Mhm.
kindness, and things of that nature. So I'm
Yeah.
very proud of that.
Yeah, I love that message. Love that message, and definitely one that is important to explore in the world and explore with young people. So curious about what connected you to writing and the written word. Were there teachers or books or things like that that initially connected you?
Well, definitely, I would say, growing up, and this probably goes against what a lot of writers, or goes against maybe what a lot of other writers have experienced. I wasn't a huge reader as a child, of not of fiction anyway. I was mostly a magazine person or a TV watcher.
Hmm.
So a lot of fiction there, of course. But I was, the oldest of my siblings. And so my job was kind of to take care of them, and we'll sit in front of the TV. and my mom was a single mom mostly, and working. So we did venture to the library at times. So I wouldn't say during my formative, middle grade years that I was like drawn to a lot of books. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love middle grade is because I try to give kids the books that I did not have. But
Mm-hmm.
the caveat to that is it's not that they were not theirs, it's that I was not exposed to them. Like
Mm-hmm.
learning more about middle grade, there were a lot of middle grade, not a lot, I won't never say that, but there were middle grade books available with some African American characters, but I just did not come in contact with them, and I wish that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Like, say for instance, I had Charlotte's Web, and I remember not really connecting to that book, even though it's quote unquote a classic, but I had no connection to it, and I was like, and it didn't spur me on to read more.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that speaks so much to sharing about authors,
Mm-hmm.
and teachers sharing about authors, parents sharing about authors, because I mean, my brain immediately goes to Mildred Taylor. So yeah. So unless you're intentional about saying, "Hey, here's a classroom library. We're going to read this book that's a classic, but we're also going to read this range of classic books." I think that's just so important to point readers in many directions.
Right, and I believe that is Roll of Thunder. Near my
Hmm.
I was exposed to that later, but learning that she had so many other books, and there's Virginia Hamilton. I wasn't
Hmm.
exposed to Virginia Hamilton until later, and there were so many others. So I learned that really as an adult who started to write middle grade, because middle grade was not my entry into publishing. I
Hmm.
actually entered adult commercial fiction or adult literary. I would think literary fiction. It was actually James Baldwin's Go Tell It on the Mountain that
Hmm.
really just changed everything in my entire world. I read that book I was a receptionist, and I was sitting there flipping through magazines, and I think the book I was reading at the time was um, Master of the Game by Sidney Sheldon. So I was just reading that, and a secretary came to my desk. She was, how we talk, and she said, "Hey, I have a book that you might like," and I'm like, "Okay." And she gives me this little thin book by an author that I really hadn't heard of before, James Baldwin. And so
Hmm.
I put my Master of the Game, Sidney Sheldon, aside, and I read this book. And one day, I
Hmm.
read Go Tell It on the Mountain. And at that time, I think a marketing major. I had planned to have some big career in business or something like that. And I changed my major to creative writing just because I knew that, wait a minute, this
Hmm.
is what I have to do.
Oh wow, I
That's
love
my
that.
story, Jason. That's my Baldwin story.
Love it. And I love how, if you find the right book, it can totally change your path like that.
It can change your life. When I tell kids that, when I, speak at schools and such, I am not exaggerating. That one book changed everything for me.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned speaking at schools. I'm curious if there has been an interaction. Sometimes authors get letters from kids, or sometimes you'll sort of have an interaction with a reader at a school. Any interaction that stood out as just something that is so memorable that's happened through the course of your writing.
Wow, I've had so many, and it's just been a absolute blessing to interact with kids. I've had many at middle schools, but I'll tell you this one time, I was at a Barnes and Noble, and a student came up to me. She was dressed like my character Georgie.
Hmm.
She had her hair braided. Um, and she just embodied my character, telling me that okay, let me tell you, it was the first time that I really truly believed that I was someone's favorite author. So she dressed like the cover of my book. She brought me a necklace. that it was made of candy, one of those candy necklaces.
Oh
She
yeah.
drew a picture of me and my character. It was such an experience for me. And
Yeah.
at that, I teared up. It was just an amazing experience. So I knew that my work had really, impacted her. And I just felt that love. And she, through, with her mother's permission, connected with me on Facebook,
Hmm.
and invited me to her school as her guest. So it was wonderful.
Love that. I love that. Um, and you mentioned empathy. We've talked a lot about kindness. Other ideas or other connections that you hope when readers finish reading your work that they're still thinking about in any other sort of messages or themes or uh, motifs or anything like that that you hope readers
Oh,
catch.
of course. Love Like Sky is basically um, about parents, two young girls navigating their parents' divorce.
Hmm. Hmm.
So with that, I love that kids who are in a blended family whose parents have, not only divorced but remarried, and they have a stepsister or a stepbrother. When I talk about that in classrooms or auditoriums, kids really connect
Hmm.
because they don't really get to share a lot of that. And I ask kids to raise their hand if they're in a blended family, if they've ever tried to connect with a stepbrother or stepsister. So there's that, and I like to give them that conversation starter. A lot of parents who are going through that, may purchase the book just because it is a way to open that line of dialogue. Teachers use it to open up that dialogue. And now for kids who are in a quote unquote intact family, they get to, maybe they don't understand what it means to have a friend who has divorced parents. So maybe
Hmm.
they need um, that to teach them empathy, to teach them how to relate to their friend who's going through this. So a lot of different things that you take away. And forever this summer, the next book, the sister book to Love Like Sky, that takes on a whole separate theme that deals with uh, generational, um, pretty much teaching younger kids how to relate to their elders.
Hmm. Hmm.
We touch on Alzheimer's, so that is something that kids kind of experience, but no one really talks to them directly about what's
Hmm.
going on with grandmother, why grandma doesn't remember things as well. So in that book, I touch on that.
Yeah, yeah, and so many important ideas and experiences, and I love how books can connect readers to experiences and to authors, um, sometimes in these like invisible ways from reader to author as well. And then other instances where you have someone who dresses like your character and invites you to their school. So
Well,
love that.
that's where representation always matters. When they get to see
Hmm.
someone that looks like them, reflects uh, their hair texture, their skin complexion. That's always important. So people say representation matters, but when you really see it in action like
Hmm.
that, it becomes just that more important to you.
Absolutely, 100%.
And then,
Um,
friendship is always an ongoing theme in all of my work, teaching kids how to detect maybe quote unquote fake friends,
mhm.
um, how to deal with bullying. All of these subjects I like to address when I write middle grade.
Yeah, yeah, definitely big issues for middle grades and sometimes adults too. Those are
Yeah,
life lessons.
definitely. And a way for adults to talk to children, which what books are, to read together, to use this time, not just, hey, go read this book, but hey, you read a chapter to me, let's discuss some things. It's something, because some of the topics may be a little challenging, a little difficult.
Mhm.
And all of my work, I always try to connect it with realistic events,
Mhm.
especially Black Lives Matter. Trayvon Martin is represented, Michael Brown.
Mhm.
So come across these names, there's an opportunity for a parent, a guardian, big sister, big brother to take that moment, look into these, teach about those. So it gives uh, the teacher the opportunity to have quote unquote a teachable moment,
Hmm.
and we don't forget these people that have been sacrificed.
Yeah, and I appreciate the work that you are doing in sharing books that can start those conversations and help readers understand a little bit more, and just another reason to read. Absolutely.
Right. Adults and children. Adults need it too. And keep in mind, adults read middle grade. Maybe
Hmm.
they don't even have grandchildren or kids around, but sometimes we want to not have all the gruesomeness. We may not want all of the things that come with adult fiction. We may want just that those more subtle themes that come with middle grade, and
Hmm.
maybe that is why adults will gravitate toward middle grade and enjoy it without a kid present. So
Absolutely.
think about that.
Absolutely. I am one of those readers. Absolutely.
Me
Uh,
too, me too. I promise. Right?
so last official question, and then we can hit anything that we've missed at all. And that is, I always like to give folks the space to share about next creative steps, places where readers can connect, um, websites, social media, or whatever that happens to be.
Oh, sure. Well, I wouldn't. My next work is probably going to be YA, and
Hmm.
and the distinction with that, you can kind of broach more adult topics. Like,
Hmm.
of course, in middle grade, we stay away from serious relationships, romantic relationships. You won't find that in middle grade. But in YA, I think that the next book that we are kind of out on submission with is a YA novel that really kind of gets into more of these adult subjects. So that
Hmm.
is what I've been working on, as well as a collection of short stories. Prior to writing novels, um, I was working on short stories. So
Hmm.
I really love the genre of the short story, and want to do more of that. So those are, I'm kind of working between the two, between seeing how this proposal, pans out, um, and then also starting a new venture on working on short stories.
Love it. Love it. I love hearing that there's YA on the way for,
Yes,
especially for readers that have caught the middle grades bug and want to keep reading. And then I appreciate a good short story, something you
yeah,
can read or read with somebody right before bed or just at some point in the
right.
day when you have time. So,
Well,
um,
when I noticed that maybe novels were for me is because my first short story happened to be about like 30 pages, 30 or 40 pages. So I was kind of like, maybe I should venture into a longer, uh, venture into a novel. But some short stories are just meant to be short, sweet, get in, get out, and
mhm.
that's it. So I want to focus a little bit more on those as opposed to the longer short stories that I've been doing. So I got a little bit of both in mind.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think you mentioned how to contact me. I'm all
Mhm.
over social media, believe it or not, primarily on TikTok.
Oh, nice, nice.
I don't know how that happened, Jason. I didn't think it was where I well, you know what? I'm gonna take that back. I do know how it happened. I was in Barnes and Noble setting up for a reading, no, not a book signing, 2021, when Love Like Sky, no, when Forever This Summer came out, and there was a table that had book talk on it and a stack of books. And I was like, what is this? And they told me about TikTok, and the rest was history. I jumped on immediately, and hey, I've been on ever since.
Love that. Love that. On TikTok. I love it. I am not on TikTok. Unless my students, capture like a dance that I do or something like that
Yeah.
and put it out
Well,
there.
I think just like Facebook and just like other platforms is what we call aging up. You'll be
Hmm.
very surprised if you go on TikTok that it is not for just dancing. I'm not doing an ad for TikTok here, but I'm just saying it's a little older than we think, and there's a
Hmm.
lot of good. Um, Even though Book Talk really didn't do much to further my book, but I do enjoy being on the platform and have quite a following there.
Wonderful,
I talk
wonderful.
all about writing. That's all I do is talk about writing.
Love it. Have we missed anything that you want to make sure to mention before we close out, or any final words for listeners out there?
Well, I would just, to follow me on social media. I always love to, to share my experience, which is what I do, especially on TikTok under Leslie C. Youngblood. And my goal when I'm on TikTok or any social media platform is to just encourage people to write,
Hmm.
encourage people to tell their story. And I do that from adults to kids because, I found my voice, I found my love for this. And so many others want to tell their story and they're waiting for quote unquote the perfect time. And that doesn't exist. Start
Hmm.
telling your story often, start telling your story now, and connect with people who want to motivate you to do that.
Love it. Wonderful message. And thank you for spending some time with me and talking with me a few minutes this morning. Glad to have you back anytime to talk about the YA book as it comes to be, or short stories, or anything of that nature.
Jason, thank you for having me. I really appreciate your time and appreciate what you do to talk about books. Love it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
All right. Bye bye. See you guys soon.
Bye.